The story you know is a lie. Before Pinocchio was a beloved symbol of hope and honesty, he was a violent, selfish puppet condemned by his own creator. In Italy in 1881, his adventures were soaked in blood and terror. The original tale opened with murder, it ended with execution, and it was meant to scare children into obedience. Why did Collodi create a nightmarish Pinocchio, and what dark forces shaped this disturbing origin? The answers are hidden in the punishment-driven pages the world tried to forget. Carlo Lorenzini was born in Florence in 1826, the first of 10 children in a family that scraped by on the wages of a cook and a servant. The narrow, dim streets of his childhood offered little comfort. Hunger and uncertainty were daily companions. As the eldest, he was sent to live with relatives in the countryside, a move meant to ease the strain at home. That rural exile left him with a deep sense of displacement, but it also exposed him to the sharp discipline and hard lessons that would shape his worldview. Lorenzini took the pen name Collodi from his mother's village, a nod to the place that became his refuge. His early years were marked by a restless drive to escape poverty. He found work as a journalist using satire to cut through the hypocrisy of politicians and churchmen. His writing, often biting and unsparing, reflected the bitterness of a man who knew the cost of hunger and humiliation. The world he saw was not gentle, and his stories rarely offered comfort. In his 20s, Collodi enlisted in the wars of the Risorgimento, fighting for a unified Italy. On the battlefield, he witnessed violence firsthand. Death was not a distant threat, but a reality that lingered in memory. The discipline of military life left its mark, reinforcing a belief in harsh consequences for disobedience. After the wars, he returned to Florence, but financial struggle followed him. He took whatever work he could find, tutoring, translating, and writing textbooks for the new Italian schools. Each job brought him closer to the rigid systems of discipline that dominated Tuscan classrooms, where corporal punishment was routine and obedience was demanded at all costs. These experiences, poverty, war, and the relentless pressure to conform shaped Collodi's fiction. His stories bristled with warnings and punishments. For Collodi, morality was not a gentle lesson but a matter of survival. The world he created for Pinocchio was not a fantasy but a reflection of the unforgiving reality he knew all too well. On July 7, 1881, the first issue of Giornale per I Bambini appeared on Italian newsstands, carrying the opening chapters of a story called La storia di un burattino. The magazine, a new experiment in children's publishing, promised adventure and moral instruction in equal measure. Collodi's tale arrived not as a finished book, but in short, irregular bursts, each installment ending abruptly, often with Pinocchio in peril, dangling between punishment and possible redemption. The rhythm was unpredictable. Some weeks brought new chapters, others passed in silence, leaving readers suspended in uncertainty. The story's pace was staccato by design, a tactic that kept children and their parents hungry for the next episode. This episodic structure shaped the entire mood of the narrative. Each chapter delivered swift consequences for Pinocchio's actions, rarely allowing him or the reader a moment's comfort. When Pinocchio ignored advice or strayed from his duties, the punishment came quickly and without mercy. The magazine's format encouraged these cliff-edge endings, making each lesson feel urgent and final. By late October 1881, the serial reached a grim halt. Pinocchio, strung up by his enemies and left swinging from an oak, seemed finished. The magazine published no rescue, no redemption, just a puppet's body creaking in the wind. The pause that followed was deafening. Letters poured in from readers, both children and adults, demanding to know what would become of the puppet. It was only after months of public outcry that Collodi resumed the story in February 1882, now with illustrations that gave Pinocchio his first fixed face. When the full book appeared in 1883, it gathered these fragments into a single, relentless arc. But the serial's abrupt stops and harsh lessons left a mark that no later revision could erase. The magazine had forged a culture where every misstep brought swift retribution, and every episode ended with the threat of darkness. Pinocchio enters the world already at odds with it. From the first pages, the narrator spares no sympathy for the puppet, calling him obstinate, unruly, and impossible to teach. Pinocchio's own words leave no room for doubt. "I've been nothing but a truant and a vagabond." I've never obeyed anyone, and I've always done as I pleased." This is not a hero shaped for easy redemption. He lies, he shirks every task, and he treats kindness with suspicion or outright contempt. When offered advice, he scoffs. When given a home, he runs away. Even the talking cricket, his would-be conscience, finds himself dismissed and, soon enough, silenced. The narrator's voice hovers above the tale like a judge, cataloging each act of defiance. Every episode reads less like a child's adventure than a list of charges. Pinocchio's misbehavior is not mischievous in the playful sense. It is willful, sometimes cruel, and always self-serving. He steals, he lies, he ignores warnings, and he blames others for his troubles. The text makes no attempt to soften these faults. Instead, it dwells on them, inviting readers to watch as the puppet's choices lead him deeper into trouble. In Collodi's Italy, such flaws were not quirks to be forgiven, but dangers to be rooted out. The story's relentless moral commentary, sometimes voiced by the narrator, sometimes by Pinocchio himself, serves as both indictment and confession. The puppet is not a blank slate, nor a victim of circumstance. He is, by his own admission, the architect of his own suffering. The harshness that follows is not random cruelty, but, in the logic of the tale, the only fitting response to a character so determined to resist all correction. The talking cricket appears early in Pinocchio's story, offering a single unwelcome warning. In Collodi's original text, the cricket is not a cheerful sidekick, but a voice of conscience, one that Pinocchio wants nothing to do with. The encounter is brief and brutal. The cricket tells Pinocchio that disobedient children come to a bad end, and that laziness leads only to misery. Pinocchio, hungry and angry, refuses to listen. He shouts back, "Be quiet, you tiresome cricket." Then, without a pause, he grabs a wooden mallet and hurls it across the room. The Italian word Collodi uses, crack, lands with a jolt. The hammer strikes the cricket, smashing it against the wall. Some translations are blunt. The talking cricket is left stuck to the wall, dead. Others are more graphic, describing it reduced to a pancake or pulp. There is no remorse, no second thought. Pinocchio simply shrugs and moves on, leaving the body of his conscience behind. This is not a moment of slapstick or childish mischief. It is a cold, calculated act. The cricket's murder shocks not just for its violence, but for its speed and finality. In 1881, Italian readers would have recognized crack as the sound of something breaking beyond repair. The lesson is immediate. In Collodi's world, ignoring moral advice is not a quirk, but a deadly mistake. Pinocchio's choice to silence the cricket sets the tone for everything that follows. There is no magical rescue, no gentle correction. The puppet's first independent act is to destroy the one voice trying to steer him right. In later versions, the cricket returns as a ghost or is reimagined as a friendly guide. But in Collodi's hands, the conscience is fragile, and its destruction comes with no warning. The violence is not accidental. It is the first clearest sign that Pinocchio's world will punish defiance with real consequences. The story does not ask readers to forgive the puppet. Instead, it invites them to watch as each bad decision brings a new, harsher fate. The hammer falls, the cricket is gone, and the path ahead grows darker. Night falls in the woods outside the village. Pinocchio, desperate to protect the gold coins meant for his father, stumbles through the darkness with two figures at his side, the fox and the cat. They promise safety, but their voices are slick with false concern. Every step draws him deeper into their trap. When the time comes, they drop the disguise. The fox and the cat are not bumbling tricksters, but cold executioners. They seize Pinocchio and drag him beneath the limbs of a great oak. No crowd gathers, no hero arrives, just the hush of leaves and the sound of rope being knotted. They pass the cord around his neck, not once but twice, as if to make sure. Collodi lingers on the details, writing, "They bound him with a cord passed twice around his neck, and they hoisted him onto the branch of a great oak. The fox and the cat haul him up, their faces blank, their work methodical. Pinocchio's wooden body swings, creaking, in the wind. He dangles there, helpless, his limbs twitching like a puppet with cut strings. The narration offers no comfort, only the image of a puppet left to die as the assassins vanish into the night. This is how the story ended for months in 1881. There was no magical rescue, no last-minute reprieve. The serial simply stopped, leaving readers with the image of a lifeless body twisting from the oak. Collodi describes Pinocchio as dangling like a sack of sawdust. The silence that followed in the magazine pages was as chilling as the scene itself. Children wrote in, begging to know if the puppet could be saved. But in that moment, the lesson was final. Disobedience, greed, and trust in the wrong hands led not to mischief, but to the noose. The fox and the cat, executioners cloaked as fools, delivered a punishment meant to be permanent. The world of Pinocchio offered no softness, only the cold logic of consequence. A boy wakes up in the dark, his ears lengthening and his hands twisting into hooves. Lampwick, Pinocchio's last friend, thrashes in terror as his own face stretches and the bray of a donkey forces its way out of his throat. The transformation is slow and humiliating. Collodi spares nothing. Skin prickles, bones crack, and childhood vanishes beneath rough fur. Boys who shirked school and chased pleasure now find themselves sold at auction, whipped and harnessed for labor. Lampwick's cries fade into the mindless noise of the herd. Pinocchio too grows ears and a tail, condemned to the same fate, beaten, branded, and driven until his puppet voice is lost in braying. Earlier, a monstrous figure towers above the stage lights. Mangiafuoco, the puppet master, seizes Pinocchio by the neck and shakes him until his joints rattle. The threat is not empty. Mangiafuoco's great hands hover, ready to toss the puppet into the fire. Mangiafuoco says you will make fine kindling, and Pinocchio feels the heat licking at his legs. The air fills with the smell of burning wood and fear. It is only by pleading for another's life, offering himself in place of a friend, that Pinocchio escapes the flames. But Mangiafuoco's mercy is fleeting, and the lesson is clear. In this world, warmth means danger and survival depends on the whims of those in power. The sea brings no safety. When Pinocchio finally tries to return home, he finds Geppetto swallowed whole by the dogfish, a beast so vast it dwarfs every nightmare. Geppetto disappears into the belly of the monster, lost and presumed dead. Pinocchio dives after him, the waves closing overhead. Inside the dogfish, darkness presses in on all sides. Hunger gnaws at both father and son. Escape is a desperate scramble through rot and shadow, the only light the hope of seeing daylight again. Punishment in Collodi's story is not abstract. It is written on bodies, in the welts of the auction whip, the burns of the fire, the ache of donkey limbs, and the hunger inside a sea monster's gut. Each ordeal is a warning, delivered with the certainty that no act of defiance goes unanswered. The spectrum of suffering is wide, and no lesson is ever gentle. In the decades after Italian unification, the classroom became a battleground for shaping citizens. Teachers, armed with new primers, believed that fear was the surest path to discipline. According to historian Lucy Rial, the state's push for mass literacy was less about enlightenment than about control. Lessons were harsh. Corporal punishment was routine. Children learned to read with one eye on the blackboard and the other on the cane. Fairy tales, once whispered warnings in village kitchens, found their way into official textbooks, stripped of comfort and sharpened into tools for obedience. Collodi's Pinocchio fit perfectly into this world. Its violence was not an accident or an exaggeration, but a reflection of daily life in the New Italy. Tales of disobedient boys who met terrible ends became part of the curriculum, reinforcing the message that the world was unforgiving and that safety lay in submission. In this system, stories like Pinocchio were less about fantasy and more about survival. The brutality was functional, a warning, not a nightmare. Children were expected to see themselves in the puppet's suffering, to flinch at his mistakes, and to remember the lesson long after the book was closed. In 1940, Walt Disney's studio released its own version of Pinocchio, and almost overnight, the puppet's world changed. The sharp edges of Collodi's story were sanded down. The violence vanished. The noose, the hammer, and the whip disappeared from the screen. Instead of a puppet hanged in the woods, Disney's Pinocchio faces mischief on Pleasure Island, where bad boys sprout donkey ears but never meet a final, terrifying end. The talking cricket, now called Jiminy, survives every misstep, chirping gentle advice instead of dying on a wall. Mangiafuoco, the fire-breathing puppet master, is replaced by Stromboli, still menacing but never lethal. Even the dogfish becomes Monstro, a monster to be outrun, not an abyss to be survived. This softening was no accident. According to fairy tale scholar Jack Zipes, Disney's creative team recognized that Collodi's brutality would never pass for family entertainment. They stripped away the punishments and the pain, trading terror for whimsy. The result was a story that could sell toys, fill theaters, and reassure parents. Harsh lessons gave way to safe adventure. The original warnings meant to frighten children into obedience were erased, replaced by the promise that good intentions and a little luck would always win the day. Fairy tales still shape how we teach right from wrong, but fear-based lessons rarely disappear. They just change form. As stories get softer, the urge to control through caution persists, echoing Collodi's century-old warnings. The real Pinocchio reminds us, behind every innocent tale, there is a shadow of the world that invented it. What do you see behind your favorite story? Let me know in the comments.